On this super review live, we're going to take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Buds Live. So these are a true wireless sort of in-ear monitor-ish earphone. I've actually been living with these for about the past month and comparing them to, of course, the AirPods, of course, the original Galaxy Buds Plus. The naming scheme here is a little bit different. Maybe we should just call them the Beans. But yeah, I've been living with these for about a month now. It's kind of my daily driver Bluetooth interface with my phone, and really just trying to figure out, where does this thing kind of fit in the market? Does this serve a unique purpose? Because obviously it looks very unique, and well, there's a couple of unique promises here. So the Galaxy Beans Live, if you're not familiar with these things cost around $170. So they're actually a little bit more expensive than the Galaxy Buds Plus. The Buds Plus being a little bit more of a traditional, true wireless earphone. But what's kind of unique here is that they've got an open ear fit, right? Rather than sort of creating a seal in your ear like you get with the AirPods Pro or the Galaxy Buds Plus, these fit a little bit more kind of like a traditional earbud, more like a traditional AirPod, the original ones. But sort of the downside to that open ear fit is that you don't get noise isolation. I mean, that's kind of the plus side of it, but it's also kind of the downside. And so curiously, with the Galaxy Buds Live, the Beans, Samsung baked in active noise canceling. And I was really interested to see, could this kind of deliver on the strengths of an open ear true wireless earphone, as well as the strengths of a closed inner ear canal earphone? And in short, well, it's gonna get complicated. I'm gonna say right now, just up front, I think that these things are a pretty unique product. They actually do deliver somewhat of a unique experience, but I think for me, I'm probably gonna end up sticking with my AirPods. And now if you are a Samsung Galaxy diehard fan and you think I'm an AirPod or an Apple fanboy, we'll address that later. But for now, let's start by talking about sort of the build and the physical aspects of the Galaxy Beans Live. So, I mean, just up front, oh yeah, actually, you know what I should mention before I get too deep into this? This is a live review. If you're watching now and you've got questions for me that I don't get to, please stick around for the review. I'm gonna get through this review in about 10 or 15 minutes. At the end of that, I'm gonna have a conversation with the folks that are here in the live stream and answer any unanswered questions. For the rest of you, hold tight. Again, like 10 or 15 minutes, you're gonna get a score on these bad boys. So yeah, the physical aspects of the Beans Live, I think it's, obviously it's unique. These things look unlike any other earphone that you've seen, probably, because, I don't know, have you ever seen an earphone that looks like this? Obviously it looks a little bit like a bean. Maybe it looks a little strange, but I think they look pretty cool, frankly. The one concern I had a little bit about this case in general, and like kind of for me, one of the most important aspects of a true wireless earphone is that the case be nice and compact. Fortunately, I find that this case is sufficiently compact. Is it as small as an AirPods Pro case? Not quite. I guess it depends on which dimensions you go by, right? The AirPods Pro may be a little bit taller, but the thickness of the Galaxy Beans Live case it intrudes a little bit in the pocketability, but generally I find it pretty good. I think even the Galaxy, the Buds Plus are a little bit more pocketable than these, just because of the shape, even though thickness-wise maybe pretty similar, frankly. The shape of this I find not quite as pocketable, but that's me getting really, really picky. And you don't need to be that picky, because generally I've had pretty good experience with this case. You do get USB-C charging here in the back, as well as you get wireless charging built in. I can say that I pretty much only ever exclusively used the wireless charging, and this is maybe jumping ahead, but I never really even had to do much charging because the battery life on this case is pretty strong. I forget exactly the battery life that they claim on the case, but I know that they claim 5 to 8 hours of battery on the Buds, depending on which features you use. And I could say that I definitely never used them for 5 to 8 hours straight, so I didn't test that, but I can say that overall, very happy with the battery life on this, and I don't know, just charging was just never on my mind with this, which is also the case mostly with these options up here. Back to the build and the physical aspects. Let's talk about these beans. And let's do a little fit test so I can kind of show you how they fit in. So it's actually kind of interesting. Every time I've introduced these to somebody else, I like to share the stuff I'm using. The immediate feedback of people is that they don't really know how to put them in their ears. And so just as the FYI, you take the front of it and you kind of slot it into the ear like that, and it just kind of rests in there. Like, I don't know, if you're used to fitting an in-ear sealed canal sort of fit, it might feel weird, but there's a benefit to it, right? I don't have my ears sealed. There is a little bit of occlusion. Like, all right, if you're wearing something like bone conduction earphones, there's obviously nothing in your ear, so you hear everything around you perfectly fine. If you're wearing a deep seal earphone, like something like an Etymotic, that's kind of the opposite end, where you're blocking out a lot of sound. The Galaxy Buds Live are somewhere in between, but much more toward the open ear design. So I can still hear myself talking mostly normal. There's a little bit of, again, that occlusion effect where my sound, my voice to myself is a little bit different, so it's not quite as open as something like the original AirPods. But I think it's a pretty interesting and unique balance. Comfort-wise, I found them fairly comfortable. Maybe not quite as comfortable as something that fits a little bit more traditionally. I found a little bit of pressure kind of up here on my ear. Now, Samsung does include these little silicone fins here, and I've got the large ones on here. I did find that the large ones, I'm not sure if it was they give me extra padding or what, but I did find that they were more comfortable in my ears for longer periods of time if I stuck with the large fins. So your mileage may vary. I don't know that it was necessarily because my ears are large, but I did find that that helps. So comfort-wise, they're pretty solid. Just generally, I don't have an issue wearing these on, hour, 2 hour long hikes, which is what sort of my typical use. And on that note, I think also worth calling out is that security-wise, these things are pretty good. I didn't have any issues with these things popping out of my ears, including, while I was in my garage doing jump rope, hitting a heavy bag, bicycling, no issues there whatsoever. Something like the original AirPods, a lot of people do have issues with these things fitting securely, including my wife, and she tried these things out briefly, and it did seem like the Galaxy Buds Live fit in her ears better than something like the original AirPods. So there's a little plus side there. The only thing that maybe is worth just kind of reiterating is the way that these things fit. So I mentioned that it's a little bit unique and odd. That's true, but maybe more of a problem is that, I don't even know if I want to call it a problem at this point, but we'll get to it. More of an oddity is that the fit is a little bit fiddly, right? So I described how they kind of slot into my ear and rest gently, but there's a bunch of different ways you could wear it, right? I can stuff it in my ear canal a little bit deeper, and that creates maybe closer to a sealed ear fit. I can actually kind of pull it up a little bit higher, and it's creating even less of a seal. And so there's sort of this in between where you can fit it in your ear and create more or less of a seal. And now that's going to have an effect on how much audio is kind of blocked by your surroundings, but it's also going to have an effect on the sound quality, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, that's just kind of the general gist of the build of the Galaxy Buds Live. Again, if you've got any questions about these things that I didn't answer right now, please leave them in the live chat right now, and I'll get to those questions in a little bit. But we'll continue by talking about sort of the functionality, just like the Bluetooth functionality and stuff like that. So I mean, we'll start with that Bluetooth stuff, and generally I'm pretty happy with these. In fact, these are some of the most impressive Bluetooth quality or Bluetooth connection of anything that I've got. Kind of my gold standard right now is the AirPods Pro. I think even the original AirPods are pretty good, but the AirPods Pro are even a little bit better in terms of how fast they connect, how little Bluetooth latency you get, and then the Bluetooth range that you get on the AirPods Pro is outstanding. And I gotta say, with the Buds Live, it's pretty much just as good, if not as good. You're splitting hairs if you're trying to find major differences between these. So when you first open the case of the Galaxy Buds Live, that's when it seems to start to make the connection to your phone. which is good because it means by the time I pull these things out and get them into my ears, they're already connected and ready to play audio, which is great. I also tested the Bluetooth latency by watching just some YouTube videos, and it seemed like very minimal latency. With anything Bluetooth, you're gonna get a bit of latency. That is to be expected, even with my gold standard, the AirPods Pro. But the latency here on the Buds Live, I found to be basically negligible. It's only there if I'm looking for it. Now, maybe if you're playing games or something like that, it might stand out a little bit more, but I don't think that it's gonna stand out any more than it would on something like the AirPods Pro. So generally pretty good with the latency. And then finally, this is the thing that was actually more impressive to me, is the Bluetooth range of the Buds Live is actually freaking outstanding. Yeah, I said freaking. So the AirPods Pro are probably like the only Bluetooth device that I have that I can leave my phone in my living room and then go out to my garage and still have a pretty solid connection. That was until now. I've also got the Galaxy Buds Live, which have that same Bluetooth range, which is pretty fantastic. So like distance-wise, I don't know, it's maybe like 25 feet. So that's maybe doesn't sound that impressive. But what's impressive is that it's like through a hallway and out a door, and there's a lot of stuff in between it. And generally, I just didn't have to worry about the connectivity and the range on this thing at all, which I thought was, for the way that I use something like this, that's important to me. Like really the things that are the most important to me, and maybe these aren't the things that are the most important to you, but for me, with a true wireless earphone, I'm probably gonna be using it for listening to podcasts and not so much listening to music. And I'm probably gonna be using it just kind of casually walking around the house. And, you know, I want the case to be nice and slim in my pocket and just not have to worry about anything else. And that's kind of what the Galaxy Buds Live deliver, at least on case size and Bluetooth connectivity. Maybe one complaint about the functionality, and this is now stepping a little bit away from the Bluetooth. A couple of small complaints. So one, and this is just the sort of thing you get used to with AirPods, there's no auto pause functionality with the Buds Live. So if you have in your ear, you're listening to music or listening to podcasts or something, you take one out, there's no automatic pause. That's also the case with the Galaxy Buds Plus, so not too surprising, I suppose, but it's a little bit disappointing, especially when you look at the bottom of the Bud Live here, and it does seem like it's got an infrared sensor on it, the same that you get on the AirPods, and that little infrared sensor on the AirPods is what they use to automatically pause your music, but unfortunately they don't do that here with the Buds Live. And then the other complaint, this one's a little bit more major in my opinion, and I don't know, I guess I'll go back to this camera. It's just when you're fitting these things into your ear, I find that the button, it's a touch sensitive button, it's too easy to activate by accident. Also the case with the Galaxy Buds Live and pretty much anything that has touch sensitive controls. So generally I'm not a big fan of touch sensitive controls. And that's what you get here with the Buds Live. And unfortunately, just a lot of the times I mentioned, you know, that the fit can be a little bit fiddly and you kind of got to like find the right spot. A lot of the times when I'm finding that right spot, I'm accidentally toggling the pause play inadvertently. And it's just, I don't know, it creates a little bit of a janky experience. Now, once it's in your ear, it's not a problem. And in fact, there is some benefit to that sensitivity. This is the sort of thing that most people probably don't know they care about until they get used to it, like I have. But what I like about the sensitivity is I can actually activate it just like that. I just touch my shoulder to the earphone and it is able to activate the pause play. Does that not seem important to you? I promise it's actually pretty useful. So if you're doing something like dishes, like I'm often doing, listening to audio and someone comes up behind you and wants to talk, boom, you just do one of these and you can have a conversation without having music or podcasts playing in the background of that conversation. I think that's actually pretty cool. So that is sort of, you know, a little point about the sensitivity of this. I think we should also talk about the active noise canceling. And if you've seen any other reviews of the Galaxy Buds Live, you've probably already heard this, but just in case you haven't, the noise canceling on these is frankly pretty disappointing. Like it's almost might as well not be there, frankly. That's my honest opinion. I mean, so I have it set up right now so that I can toggle noise canceling on and off just by pressing and holding on the touch panel. And I did that because, you know, with something like the AirPods Pro, I find myself very frequently bouncing between noise canceling on or the transparency mode. With the Galaxy Beans Live, however, it's not really necessary to constantly bounce back and forth between because there's almost no difference. In fact, they claim the battery life as being between 5 to 8 hours, depending on whether or not you've got noise canceling turned on. I would say if battery life matters to you at all, just go ahead and leave noise canceling turned off because it's probably not going to matter. Now, I can say that there is some difference that I detect with the active noise canceling on the Galaxy Beans Live, and mostly it's kind of like just like a low background hum that you may or may not even detect until you turn on noise canceling with this. For example, like if you're outdoors and an airplane flies overhead, like even if it's in the distance, right? You just kind of hear like this faint kind of rumble going on. These things will actually cut out that sort of sound. I also found that where the noise canceling was probably the most useful was when I was walking on the street alongside traffic. It doesn't cut out the traffic sound, like you can still hear the cars around you, which is actually kind of a nice feature if you don't want to get hit by a car. But it does do a good job, I think, of cutting out the tire roar, which is just kind of like the low frequency rumble, the low frequency sound that comes from that traffic. And it just makes it a little bit more pleasant. And it also means that you don't have to like crank up the volume on your player just because you're walking next to traffic. So in that sense, the noise canceling does do some good, but in most circumstances, it does almost nothing. Like to the extent that I mentioned, I like having other people try things that I'm reviewing, and 2 other people that I had try these things both detected literally 0 difference with the noise canceling. So you've probably seen some YouTube reviewers say there's basically no difference. I can support that general opinion, but I can also support it with a little bit more of a qualification that if there is a low frequency hum or something, that they will cut out that sound. It really doesn't sound anything like active noise canceling that you would get on something like the AirPods Pro or especially, you know, Bose over-ear headphones. It's the sort of feature that, I don't know, if they could have made these things $50 cheaper by not including active noise canceling, frankly, that's probably how I would go with it. But yeah, I don't know, that's the general functionality of the Galaxy Beans Live. I don't have too much more to say about it, but again, if you've got questions, please ask them in the live chat. So I think we can go ahead and wrap this up and go into the sound quality. So now the sound quality of the Beans Live actually kind of impressed me because, all right, let's take the AirPods, the original AirPods and the AirPods Pro as kind of good examples of what I expected. So the original AirPods, I think they're pretty nice sounding earphones for what they are. They don't create a seal, so there's not a lot of bass, but I'm okay with that. The AirPods Pro, they do create a seal, and because of that, I think they do a better job of creating just that sub-bass rumble that you expect from a nicely sealed in-ear earphone. The Galaxy Beans Live, because they don't create a seal, I expected them to be more like the original AirPods, but frankly, these things are surprisingly bassy. But it depends on how you fit them. So I mentioned that when you fit them, there's kind of like an infinite range of where you could fit them. I could kind of fit them, I shouldn't be doing that, that's just being silly. I don't need to do slapstick here, but there's an infinite range of like how deep in my ear I can fit it versus how shallow in my ear I can fit it. And that pretty significantly affects the frequency response. So you can go from having these be, frankly, in my opinion, too bassy, to being pretty moderately bassy, to being not that bassy at all, depending on the range of where you fit them. And that really affects just generally the sound quality of these, and kind of gets to one of my biggest complaints with the Galaxy Buds Live personally, is that it's very easy, unless your ears are exactly symmetrical, it's very easy to get fairly significant imbalances in the frequency response between each ear. And so you can spend some amount of time getting each ear to fit exactly the same as the other so that sonically each ear sounds roughly the same. Or if you don't spend that amount of time, you're just going to be comfortable with the sound being a little bit different between each ear. I I actually found, honestly, like for podcasts, I didn't care too much. I did not spend any time really worrying about the channel imbalances when I'm listening to podcasts. When I'm listening to music, those channel imbalances, I found pretty distracting, and they forced me to want to fiddle with these things a little bit more. And just generally, I think that fiddliness is kind of the downside of the Galaxy Beans Live. Yeah, I don't know if there's much more to say. I think that, difference-wise between, let's say, the original AirPods sound-wise, right? These things are just generally an airier sound. There's a little bit of a mid-bass bump to them, but they're not especially bassy. These things, I think the bass is still, mid-bass focused, but a surprisingly decent sub-bass hit to them. I think that maybe upper mid-range is a little bit muted on these, but again, it kind of really depends on how you fit them. The way that you fit them is going to really drastically change how these things sound, so take some of my comments with a grain of salt, but generally I find that these things are a little bit more vocal forward. These things are a little bit bassier and warmer sounding, and then if you fit them a little bit too shallow, they can lose some of that bass, and maybe the bass becomes a little bit more on par with these, but then the treble can get a little bit shrill on these, again, depending on how you fit them. Now, versus the AirPods Pro, I find that the fit on these is super consistent, so they're going to sound the same pretty much all the time, which is it's a relatively neutral-ish sound signature with, some sub-bass hump and a mid-bass dip, or more of like a lower mid-range dip. So these things can sound a little bit on the lean side, compared to these are a little bit on the warm side, but these things are a little bit, I think, still a little bit muted on the treble. But yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of the general gist of these. Frankly, I don't use any of these to listen to music except for the Galaxy Buds Plus. I think these things are pretty satisfying for music. I find that these three I use more for listening to podcasts. So I don't know, that's kind of the end of my review. I should actually, hold on real quick. I didn't think about that. I didn't think this through. I didn't prepare my stars, so I probably got the wrong stars prepared. Maybe do I have the right stars prepared? I don't know. Let's try this out. All right, so yeah, in conclusion, with the Samsung Galaxy Buds Live, again, lived with these things for a month, compared them to all these different things. What do I think of them? My final score, and I just dropped them because this is live. My final score, I'm gonna go ahead and give these things 3 stars out of 5. I think the Galaxy Buds Live, pretty nice. I think they executed pretty nicely on a very unique form factor. Again, that open ear sound you don't get with something like the Galaxy Buds Plus, and for a lot of people, that's a good thing. For some people, it's not a good thing. It kind of depends on your situation. I find for like outdoors exercising, I like an open ear fit better than a sealed ear fit. Unfortunately for me, it's just mostly down to the fiddliness of the fit and the fact that I'm accidentally tapping the play pause pretty frequently, that I don't think I'm gonna end up using these things too much more for myself outside of this review. I'm probably gonna stick to my AirPods, and if I wanna listen to music, I'll probably stick to the Galaxy Buds Plus. But that is my review of the Galaxy Beans Live. If you're interested in checking these things out, of course, I've got a link in the description down below to Amazon. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, if you liked the fact that I dropped these things in the middle of my live review, go ahead and hit the like button. If you didn't like that, I guess you can hit the dislike button, but maybe be sure to hit it twice. You can subscribe to the channel, and if you want to be part of the next live stream, please ding the bell and YouTube will let you know that I'm live. If all you wanted is the review of the Galaxy Buds Live, you are now free to go. But if you have any other additional questions and you're curious, well, let's go and have a conversation with the folks in the live chat. So, folks in the live chat, thank you for sticking around. I'm gonna look down this way and have where I've got my live chat, and I'm gonna have a conversation with you folks. A quick note, actually, I'll just kind of follow through on something I mentioned earlier in the review. If you think I'm just an Apple fanboy and that's the reason that I don't love the Galaxy Beans Live, just an anecdote. I had lunch with my friend who is, I don't want to call him a Samsung fanboy, but he's had a Samsung phone for as long as I know, currently still has a Samsung phone. And he was very interested to try these things out. So I brought them with me. I brought also along the AirPods Pro, which he had never used before. And he tried these things out. His notes, this is just kind of his opinion about it. He found that these things weren't actually that bassy, which is interesting. Again, it kind of depends on how you fit them. But he was disappointed in the bass on these, and he agreed that the noise canceling wasn't very good or didn't do anything. And then he also was pretty annoyed by the fact that the tapping the playback was pretty easy to do by accident. Versus he had never used the AirPods Pro before, put those in his ears, and like pretty quickly was smiling and laughing. So it's not just that I'm an Apple fanboy. I swear to you, I'm not an Apple fanboy. Unfortunately, I just think that these things, they're fine. They do some things pretty well and pretty unique, but I just don't love them. All right, questions. Let's get to the questions. Again, thank you all for sticking around through this. 90s anime is the best, asking how secure does it feel? So I mentioned it during the review, fit-wise. I find them pretty secure. Again, it's still an open ear earphone, so it might, on initial impression, might not feel as secure as something that is sealed, but I don't know. That's not the best test, but that's a decent test, right? They didn't fall out of my ears at all. Yeah, I didn't have any issues with these things falling out of my ears. And generally, I found these more secure than the original AirPods. I did try sort of my morning exercise routine, which is jumping rope in the garage. I mentioned that. That can shake out my AirPods. No issues here. As well as hitting the heavy bag, that can shake out AirPods. No issues here. So security, I found pretty good. Adam Mobius, Tech for Your Needs, Boba Bola, all saying, hey, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. So Boba Bola, you're talking a little bit about the fit yourself. I'm curious if you want to share a little bit more information. You mentioned they definitely won't fall out in the air, which I agree with, but when you have them on too long, it starts to hurt a bit. So that's kind of very similar to what I experienced. Again, I found that where they started to create a pressure point was basically on top of my ear, or like kind of like on this little part of the cartilage. Again, I found with the larger silicone covers, it improved that for me pretty significantly. I don't know why, frankly, because I don't even really know what these silicone covers do in my ear. Maybe it just touches down on a part of my ear that's a little bit less sensitive, but generally, I found that to help. Wara saying, what's up, what's up? NM3Z Kazi, yo, what's up? Welcome to the channel. Matteo asking, is that a Focal Alire in the background? And the answer is yes, this is a Focal Alire, and then my Sennheiser HD600s. The Focals, a buddy of mine lent them to me, so I've been listening to those. They're pretty fun. This is my first experience with the Focal. Boba Bola saying, in my opinion, the black buds and case look the best. So they actually had some questions about why I went with the white case when I did the unboxing. These things come in a number of different colors. They come in white, they come in black, they come in like this bronze gold color. And then I actually saw on Amazon you can get the red version that they appear to sell internationally, which is cool. I think the red ones look pretty cool, but I went with white for basically one main reason. They're all glossy, and I found that white is probably just, as a glossy case, gonna show fingerprints less. I'm not gonna worry about fingerprints on this, whereas on especially those bronze ones, I can just imagine fingerprints being all over them. Jason Van Dorsel saying your review of the Trex Air Aftershocks was very helpful in finding the right bone conducting headphones purchase, so thank you. Excellent, glad to hear. Yeah, just like full disclosure, Trex Air so these are actually the Trex Aeropex, but bone conduction Aftershocks, these things are still gonna be my primary go-to when it comes to listening to podcasts. I was curious if these might become my new go-to, but unfortunately they're not going to be. Das Ninja Sticks asking, do they pair well with rice? And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I have no idea what that means. Boba Bola asking, do the Galaxy Buds Live have an app? Are they on iPhone? So yeah, actually, you know what? I should have showed that. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo of this app. This is a little bit overexposed here, but maybe let's see if we can dial that in a little bit better for you. All right, so Galaxy Buds Live. Let's open that app. And this is the app that you get with, or that Samsung gives. And this is at least the iPhone version of it. I use this app on Android as well for the Buds Live. And I think it's pretty similar, but just FYI, this is what it looks like on iPhone. So you do have a toggle for turning on and off the noise canceling. Let me go ahead and open these things up so that they stay connected. Will they stay connected? Do I have to take them out of the case? You're out of the case, please connect. All right, so they do have a toggle in the app for turning on and off noise canceling, but you can also activate the noise canceling with the touch controls. So here in the touch controls, you can kind of modify what it does. You can disable the touch controls entirely, which gets rid of some of the fiddliness, but also reduces a lot of the utility. But then you can also say what you want touch and hold to do. And that's where I have it set to turning on and off active noise canceling. You could also use it to adjust volume up and down or activate voice commands, which I never use voice commands. So that's sort of what the options are. Let's see what else we have in here. You also do have a little bit of an EQ, and I primarily left it on the normal setting. I found that treble boost was pretty gnarly. I'm not a big fan of the treble boost sound. Similarly, the bass boost sound and the soft sounds I don't think are very good. Dynamic, not that great either, but clear, somewhere between normal and clear, I found pretty useful. Clear gets rid of some of the bass boom a little bit, maybe a little bit too much on the upper mid-range emphasis, at least for vocals. And again, primarily I was using these for podcasts. So for me, I found that leaving it on normal was perfectly fine. One other thing that's kind of interesting that they have here in the app is they've got this labs setting, which only gives you one option, but it's actually pretty neat. So this relieve pressure with ambient sound mode. Basically what this is it means that when you have the Buds Live, when you've got noise canceling turned off, then they will, instead of being completely passive, they will go to being sort of more like the AirPods Pro ambient mode or transparent mode, where they're passing in a little bit of audio from the outside. And it can make them a little bit more comfortable to wear. But personally, I didn't find the improvement was worth it. Actually, you know what? This brings up a good point that I should have mentioned during my review. Let's go and close out the app. A complaint that I had with the noise canceling, I should have mentioned this. And I had the same issue when I was using that transparency mode, is that wind noise that passes by these things is gonna get sort of piped into your ear as just like high frequency static. So there were actually cases where I found that the noise canceling was actually making matters worse rather than helping at all. And then similarly, when I had that sort of pass-through transparency mode on, rather than it sounding natural, I'd just be like kind of walking outdoors, a gust of wind would blow by me, and I'd get this little blip of static high frequency, which I'm not a fan of. So generally, I just left those features off. Sorry, that was a long answer to a question, but hopefully it was helpful. Yasaboom was asking, how do these things seal compared to Bose? Frankly, I have not used those Bose. I haven't used any Bose in-ear in-ear wireless headphones, so unfortunately I can't answer that question for you. I apologize. And then you were also asking, do they have the EQ? Just the EQ that I just showed there in the app. That's all the options that you get. There's no like sliders or anything like that that you can adjust manually. You just get the presets, which is fine. Magic Knight asking, does the sound canceling depend on how well it sits in your ear? And the answer is yes and no. I mean, if I fit these things deeper in my ear, there will be more noise canceling just by passive noise canceling. But I don't think that the active noise canceling setting changes too much depending on the fit. generally I found that the active noise canceling was pretty ineffective regardless of fit. You can, again, if you stuff them deeper in your ears, you're gonna get more passive noise canceling, but that's just kind of a given. Will John say, I'm struggling to understand how these can cost more than the Buds Plus. So Buds Plus, Buds Live, and I think the biggest difference, so these are $150, these are $170, and I think that the reason why they charge more for these is that active noise canceling. There's just more technology baked into here, where this is a more traditional in-ear Bluetooth without sort of those fancy noise canceling features. I think these things sound better. I think these things are more pocketable. Frankly, I actually prefer these, but you know, they don't have sort of that open air feel that you get with the Buds Live, so they're not completely a replacement for them, in my opinion. Yasaboom was also asking, are they less open than AirPods? And the answer is yes. Versus original AirPods, these things are less open. They're still pretty open, but they're less open than these things are. Now, versus AirPods Pro, these things are more open, but I found that these things with transparency mode feel more open than these do. Like, these things are always gonna cause a little bit of a blockage in sound, and again, it varies depending on how you fit them, but I find that these things are a little bit more comfortable to wear all day with transparency mode versus these, because these are still kind of passively blocking up a little bit sound. Maybe with the transparency mode on these things, they can be as open sounding as these things with transparency mode, but then again, that wind noise effect I don't really have with the AirPods Pro that I did have, unfortunately, here with the Buds Live. Now, it's a big price difference, right? $170 versus $250 for the AirPods Pro. I don't want to pretend like there's not something there with that price difference, but if you're just kind of trying to figure out which one is actually going to be better, is it worth spending extra for the AirPods Pro? If that's important to you, it might be. Madong Tani is asking, am I going to look at the Sony WF-1000XM3s or the WH-1000XM4s? So for the uninitiated, because those might sound very, very similar, those are actually two very different devices. The WFs are a true wireless in-ear, kind of similar to the AirPods Pro. And the reason I haven't reviewed those is because I know that I'm just not going to use them. The case is too large for me on those things. I have used them. My buddy, actually my same buddy that owns these Focals, he's got the WFs, and I think that they sound pretty good, and I don't know, I haven't used them a ton. I'll just be perfectly like straight up right there. Generally though, I found that they sound pretty good. Fit seemed pretty solid, but the case was just large enough that I probably wouldn't end up using it. Same reason why I never reviewed the Power Beats Pro, whatever it was that Beats released with the in-ears and the hooks. That case was just way too large. I'm not going to use it. Now, the WH-XM4s, that's the over-ear headphone. That's the new version of it. And I'm probably not going to review that either. Reason being that from what I've done a little bit of research, and everyone seems to suggest that sound-wise, they're pretty indistinguishable from the WH-XM3s, and I thought that the XM3s just don't sound good. They don't sound anywhere good enough to be worth $350, so I'm not going to spend another $350 on the XM4s, unfortunately. Try and catch up with chat a little bit. Cesario is asking, do I think they would be good for online class chat? Maybe some ANC headphones would be better. So personally, my personal opinion, I actually, before this whole COVID stuff, I almost never used my Bluetooth devices for conversations. I just don't make a lot of phone calls. But now I spend a lot of time on Zoom meetings, or not even Zoom, we use Google Meet, but I spend a lot of time on video chats. And for me, I like aftershocks. I like bone conduction personally, because I don't like talking and hearing myself kind of stuffed up in my head. And these things do a better job than what you might get with the Galaxy Buds Plus in that regard, right? They're not going to block off your own voice from yourself, and it's going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But generally, they're not as comfortable as something like bone conduction. That said, I did do a little bit of microphone testing with my wife with these, the AirPods Pro, and then just talking straight through my iPhone microphone. Both of us kind of agreed that they all sounded perfectly fine, perfectly clear. No significant complaints. If there was any difference, it's just that the Galaxy Buds Live microphone seemed to pick up more reverb from the room, so there was a little bit more of just that natural echo that you'll get in a room that's got hard walls. It was a fairly minor difference, and again, no issues in terms of intelligibility. It was perfectly clear, but there was that one minor difference. Adam Mobius asking, what are the advantages of it being more open? So I'm going to go ahead and go with the aftershocks. It's just kind of the ultimate example of why I like an open ear fit. So a number of reasons. One, it's just more comfortable. Like these things, I will literally forget they're in my ear. Whereas if you've got a sealed inner ear canal, it's going to get a little bit sweaty over time, and you're just always going to know it's there. Especially if you go to talk, like your voice is going to change to yourself, and you might get used to that kind of stuff. I don't do enough talking with in-ear seals that I am personally comfortable with it, to the point that people will ask me what are good IEMs for gaming. I don't use IEMs for gaming. For gaming, if I'm doing online gaming and I need to chat with somebody, I want an open back headphone. So I don't use IEMs for gaming because of that. The other benefits to having an open ear fit is that you can hear your surroundings. So if, like I mentioned, my Bluetooth for my phone is mostly for playing podcasts around the house. I live with someone, I've got a wife, and it's nice to be able to listen to podcasts and not sort of shut her out of my life, right? If she has a question for me, I can hear it perfectly fine through an open ear. Whereas if I have a sealed ear, I'm not gonna be able to hear her as well. And then sort of the third, fourth, I don't know, I haven't been keeping track. Another benefit is that if you're outdoors and maybe there's a safety reason why, you might want to be able to hear your surroundings. Maybe you're in a place that's a little bit dangerous. Maybe you're just not comfortable being outside around other people and having people run up behind you and not being able to hear them first. Or maybe you live in a place with mountain lions. We got mountain lions here. I'm not actually worried about mountain lions, but it is nice that I can hear them just in case. So those are a number of reasons why I personally like having an open ear fit versus a sealed ear fit. There are some sacrifices to sound quality, I find, generally with the open ear fit, but where I don't care about sound quality, which again, podcasts, audiobooks, don't really care too much, I think it's worth the sacrifice. Boba Bola was just kind of following up. Boba was the one that was talking about was having an experience with the Buds Live, also mentioning that they were a little bit uncomfortable. Boba says, that's exactly where I felt the pain. I have the default tips though. Yeah, so Boba, try out the bigger tips. Again, like I didn't find that they helped the security of my ear at all. They just, for some reason, made them a little bit more comfortable. Deliberately saying, been a fan of the long ago Micromatic days. Glad to see you're still busy. So yeah, if you aren't familiar, I actually used to have a YouTube channel called Micromatic. It's still on the internet. You can look up Micromatic, where I talked about camera stuff. And that's actually why I have camera stuff to even do this YouTube channel. I just kind of haven't done a lot of photography lately, and so I got into a new hobby, which is audio and gadgets. Yasim is asking, is the AirPod Pro a little bit open? In my opinion, no, it's not a little bit. Like I know Apple did something, or they sort of advertised some feature with the AirPods Pro with like they've got like, let's punch in here. They've got these things, which I think they describe as like some sort of air vent to make them more comfortable. I don't know, I don't really find that. I find that these things honestly fit just about the same as any other in-ear in terms of seclusion, or in terms of like blocking out outside sound. But with the transparency mode, they can feel almost like you're wearing nothing in your ear in terms of, you know, audio and sort of that pressure comfort. So it depends. If you're using that feature, they can sound pretty open, but if you're not using that feature, in my opinion, no. Cody Goolage, cool. Another user with firsthand experience of the Buds Live. I know everyone is different, but I can wear the Buds Live for 4 hours before my ears start to feel sore. I can wear the original AirPods all day, no issue. I prefer the fit of the original AirPods. Interesting. Yeah, again, like I would go for walks with these things for about 1 to 2 hours before I would start to feel that discomfort. But then again, once I switched out the tips, the gaskets, I don't know what you call those pieces. Once I switched those out, I didn't ever run into issues, but I don't think I ever wore them for 4 hours straight. Usually about 2 hours is probably about the max for me. Yasim saying, every experience I have with transparency mode, it's pretty bad. So it varies pretty significantly depending on the device you're using. I find that Apple is the one company that's actually done it really well. And again, I swear to God, I'm not some like drooling Apple fanboy. They just did it really, really well here. Like typically, transparency modes that you'll get with other headphones, you know, these things, or even like the Buds Plus do a transparency mode as well. I find that they over accentuate high frequencies, and the AirPods do it maybe a little bit, but in most cases, I don't even hear it at all. It's only when there is a particular high frequency sound. Let's say I go to wash my hands and you get like the water dripping on a metal sink. That will create a frequency that these things over amplify a little bit. But for the most part, transparency mode on the AirPods Pro is actually pretty useful. I use it quite a bit. And then Yasi saying, I have the WH-XM3s, going back to those Sony over-ear noise canceling headphones. Just so you know, it's not just me. This is what Yasi says. They are truly awful. They don't sound great, man. I mean, they're very useful as over-ear noise canceling devices. Like as an electronic, it's pretty impressive, but for sound quality, it's just not there. Will John actually kind of following up on that with a question. For people who aren't fans of the XM3s, what wireless headphones would you recommend purely from a sound quality point of view? And my personal honest answer is that my favorite Bluetooth audio is probably these, the Buds Live or the Buds Plus. If I'm listening to music for Bluetooth is just generally not going to be what I go to. I'm still pretty comfortable with a wire. But I know that's not for everybody, so if I am going to listen to music, this is still probably my favorite Bluetooth, frankly. I mean, I've got the Grado GW100, I think that's what it's called, the Bluetooth headphone. I think that sounds pretty good too, but it's not convenient enough, I guess, that for me, the Bluetooth is useful on that, and it sounds better on a wire, so if I'm going to listen to that Grado, I'm just going to listen to it on a wire. If I really need the convenience of a Bluetooth device, I find that these things are just the better balance for me. Das Ninja Sticks asking, do you need ANC or no? And it depends really on your personal living experience. I mean, I can say I barely leave the house anymore. I work remotely. This is where I do my day-to-day, Monday through Friday working. I don't really need active noise canceling. So no, personally, I do not need it, but it's nice to have it. I mean, the one case where I do use noise canceling and where I do use it on my AirPods Pro is vacuuming, which might seem kind of trite to have an earphone specifically for vacuuming, but that is the main purpose of the AirPods Pro for me. Cody asking, what do you think about the new Pixel 4a having a headphone jack? I'm thinking about using it as a makeshift larger screen Walkman, especially since the Walkman is now using Android. So I think it's cool that they're keeping the headphone jack around. However, I wouldn't have high expectations for that headphone jack. If you're not picky about this kind of stuff, ignore me, because you might be perfectly happy with it. I have the Pixel 3, or actually I think it just recently gave it away, but I used to have the Pixel 3a, which also had the headphone jack on it. Unfortunately, like, it was noticeably worse sounding to me than some other headphone jacks. And that's gonna be because of, you know, whatever DAC they have in that phone, as well as whatever amplifier. Maybe it's just coming straight from the DAC, the amplifier is built, whatever that circuitry is in the Pixel 3a, it's just not impressive. If you're listening to a basic headphone, like something like the Audio-Technica M50s, you might not notice any difference. But if you're listening to sensitive in-ear monitors and you're listening to high-res audio, and you're like critical listening, you might notice that it just doesn't sound that good. In my opinion, as much as I'm sad to see the headphone jack go away on phones, I'm actually now totally on board with using USB-C adapters. And I find that the Apple USB-C adapter is pretty good, or on Android, I would probably recommend the Meizu Hi-Fi Pro dongle. That one seems to be the one that measures well and actually still gives you plenty of power output. Sanan saying, hey, just to tell you, I have been primarily using Crystal Fit on my Pebble Time and I love it. That is some of the best news I've gotten in a while. So just for those folks who might not know what Sanan's talking about, we both use a watch called the Pebble. Here I've got the Pebble 2, he's got the Pebble Time, which has got a color screen, a little bit different. But this is a pretty classic smartwatch. I still think this is the best smartwatch on the market, and it's not even on the market anymore. You gotta find like used versions on eBay. But this is a watch face that I actually made with a friend. So Crystal Fit is what this thing is called. I made it. Sanan, I am glad you're enjoying it. That's very nice to hear. Maya was asking, what earbuds do I exercise with? My primary exercise earphone, again, it's the AfterShokz. These things, I love these things for podcast listening. For anything that's not music, this is what I want to listen to, right? If I'm listening to a podcast, if I'm watching YouTube videos, if I'm having a conversation with someone on Google Meet, video chat or something like that, that's what I like. If I'm listening to music, they don't sound that great. But I don't usually listen to music when I'm working out. And it looks like Das Ninja Sticks and Yasi are both agreeing that it's high frequency sounds that can cause issues with transparency mode and other earphones. So yeah, if you haven't tried the AirPods Pro, I do highly recommend these things for transparency mode. Actually, super useful. In fact, I think my wife uses AirPods Pro, and she didn't like the seal. Like, she was just completely opposed to a sealed ear canal earphone for a really long time, until she tried the AirPods Pro with the transparency mode on it. She's perfectly comfortable with that. In fact, that's how she has them 100% of the time that she uses them. Maya asking, what about the sound quality of the XM3 is so bad? So again, the over-ear Sony noise canceling headphones, they're just the simplest way to describe why they don't sound that great is they're just muddy. There's too much mid-bass, and it's not like high-quality mid-bass or anything like that, right? It's a boomy, muddy, congested sounding mess, in my opinion. There's just not great definition between, you know, the position of instruments and stuff like that you will get in a much nicer headphone, like right here. The Sennheiser HD600 costs less than those Sonys and sounds about 5,000 times better. Is that an exaggeration? I don't know. You can't calculate it, so you can't accuse me of that being an exaggeration. At least you can't prove it. DOS Ninja Sticks is kind of following up on the dongle DACs, the USB-C to headphone adapters, saying dongle DACs can do wonders. The X Duo Link is pretty friggin' good for 46 bucks. So the Link is one I'm kind of interested to try out because it's got a button on it, and if that can toggle pause and play, that would solve another issue that I have with playing music on a phone, is that I like having a physical pause play button. It's one of the reasons I like having my Walkman. If the X Duo Link can do that for me, that's kind of nice. Yossi asking, what are my favorite ear tips? I assume you're talking about for more traditional in-ear monitors. For the most part, I'll honestly stick with whatever stock comes on an earphone, but there are some exceptions, and usually I'll use a different ear tip to solve a particular problem. I find that generally I like the fit and comfort and security that I get from Final E-type ear tips. My only complaint about those is that they are a little bit narrow bore and they can cut a little bit of the treble and emphasize the bass a little bit. A pretty minor difference for most cases, but that's why I don't put those on absolutely everything that I have, despite the fact that I love the quality of the rubber on those. I have also recently been using Asla Sedna Zelastex tips, which is a mouthful. I don't have any within arm's reach, so I can't show them to you, but if you haven't seen those before, the Zelastex are a transparent silicone, which, I mean, it looks cool, but more to the point, they are a wide bore, which I like, preserves a lot of that treble detail. As well, just the texture of the silicone is shockingly grippy. Like, you put it in your ear and it will hold itself in place better than any other ear tip that I've tried, like by a wide margin. So the Zelastex you can use to improve if you got an earphone that you might like, but maybe it's not the most secure. Throw in a pair of Zelastex, they're gonna be secure. Now, the one downside to that grippiness is that those ear tips will now collect lint a little bit more easily than your average ear tip. And I actually have similar issues with the Final E-type tips. So that's just something you gotta live with. Kind of a pros and cons to everything. Kodamites are asking, what are some good budget Bluetooth earphones? So I haven't been in the budget Bluetooth game in a while, but the last ones that I tried that I actually quite like quite a bit are the Halao GT2s. Those are like 30 bucks or even less, even cheaper. I've seen them. Even on Amazon in the US, you can get those things for, I think I saw them for $18 once, which is ridiculous. Not a lot of features, but if you just want a nice, true wireless Bluetooth earphone, it's not bad for the price. Adrian P, cool shirt. Thank you for noticing. This is my high-res placebo t-shirt. I do sell this on Teespring. There should be a link in the pinned comment below this video if you're interested. It's only 20 bucks. I make zero money off of it because I don't care. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just think it's funny. Let's see if I can wrap up these questions. My throat's actually a little bit sore because of the smoke here in California. So I'm gonna end this pretty soon. Let's wrap this up. Let's see. Zach to go saying, don't know your name. My name's Mark. What's up? Appreciate what you're doing. Greetings from Romania. How's it going? Greetings from California, where we've got lots of fires. Yuzia asking about sound differences between the Buds Live and the AirPods Pro. I'm going to ask you to go and go back into the review. I did talk about that very specifically. I did a better job there than I'm going to do now, so I'm not going to answer that question again. Just go and rewind a little bit. It's in there. And Adam Mobius saying apparently there is a way to clean the Zelastex tips to make them like new. I would be interested in knowing that tip, and on that tip, that is going to be the end of this video. Again, like always, if you're interested in checking out the Galaxy Buds Live, I've got a link in the description down below. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please hit the like button. It helps other people find the channel. If you want to find more of this channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be part of the next live stream, please ding the bell. YouTube will let you know when I'm live. And thank you guys for sticking around and for the questions. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy. I'll see you in the next super review.